I'm not sure you're the man who should be the father of my child.
And who should be? Your co-worker?
My name is Eliot Brandt, and I used to believe in fairy tales. Not the kind with dragons and princesses, but the grown-up version where hard work pays off, good people win, and your wife doesn't spend her evenings texting another man while sitting 3 feet away from you on the couch. I'm 39, a senior architect at Coastal Design Partners, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Beautiful waterfront home, successful career, and a wife who could make heads turn at every charity gala in town. The sort of life that looks perfect from the outside, like one of those magazine spreads where everything is too clean and the people smile too wide. Vanessa was getting ready for another one of her work meetings. When I first noticed the second phone, she stood in our marble bathroom, applying lipstick with surgical precision, her reflection multiplied in the mirrors I'd designed to catch the morning light perfectly. Funny how those same mirrors now showed me things I didn't want to see. "Another late night at the office?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Derek has this new development project, very complex legal issues." She didn't look at me when she spoke, just kept working on her lips like she was painting the Mona Lisa. Derek Voss, her boss, the Golden Boy developer who owned half the marina condos in town and drove a red Jaguar like he was compensating for something. I'd met him at office parties, watched him work a room like a politician, all white teeth and firm handshakes, the kind of guy who probably practiced his smile in the mirror. "Must be some project to require so many evening consultations," I said. This time she did look at me, and her green eyes held that particular coldness I'd been seeing more often lately. "Not everyone can coast on talent like you do, Eli. Some of us have to work for our success." The comment stung because it was designed to. Vanessa had a gift for finding the exact words that would burrow under your skin and set up camp. But I just smiled and nodded, playing the part of the understanding husband. After she left, trailing expensive perfume and the click of designer heels, I stood in our kitchen and looked out at the water. The morning sun turned the bay into liquid gold, and sailboats bobbed like toys in a bathtub. This house had been my dream. Every beam and angle planned to capture views like this. Now it felt like a beautiful prison. The second phone had been small, silver, and tucked into the side pocket of her gym bag. Not her usual device with its rhinestone case and collection of social media apps. This one looked serious, businesslike, the kind of phone you buy when you don't want certain calls showing up on your regular bill. I could have confronted her right then, could have demanded explanations and transparency, like some relationship counselor would recommend. But something held me back. Maybe it was the architect in me, trained to see the whole structure before making changes. Or maybe I was just curious how far this would go. At the office, I tried to focus on blueprints and building codes, but my mind kept wandering. Gina Martinez, our paralegal and the closest thing I had to a real friend at work, noticed immediately. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," she said, perching on the edge of my drafting table. Gina was small and fierce, with dark eyes that missed nothing and a tongue sharp enough to cut glass. "Just tired. Vanessa's been working late a lot." "Uh-huh." Gina's expression suggested she knew exactly what kind of work Vanessa might be doing. "You know, there's this thing called Google. Amazing what you can find out about people these days. I'm not ready to go down that road yet." "Fair enough, but when you are, I know a guy who knows a guy. Private investigator type. Very discreet, very thorough." I filed that information away and spent the rest of the day pretending to care about zoning variances and environmental impact studies. But when 5 o'clock came, instead of heading home, I drove to Vanessa's office building. The parking garage was mostly empty, just a few scattered cars belonging to the truly dedicated or the truly desperate. Derek's Jaguar sat in its reserved spot like a red exclamation point. I parked 3 levels up and waited. They emerged together at 7:30, Vanessa's laugh echoing off the concrete walls. She touched his arm as they talked, the kind of casual intimacy that spoke of familiarity. Derek opened her car door, his hand lingering on her lower back just a moment too long. I followed them to Marcello's, an upscale Italian place downtown where the lighting was dim and the tables were private. They sat in a corner booth, heads bent together over wine and what looked like serious conversation. From my spot at the bar, I could see Vanessa pull out a manila folder, spreading papers between them like they were planning a military campaign. The bartender, a kid with too many piercings and not enough experience, kept trying to make conversation. "Rough day at the office?" Something like that. I nursed my whiskey and watched my wife of 12 years hold hands with another man across a restaurant full of people who might know us both. They left separately, Vanessa first, then Derek 10 minutes later. Professional discretion, I supposed. The kind of careful choreography that comes with practice. I went home to our beautiful house with its perfect views and its empty rooms. Vanessa's car was already in the garage, her heels kicked off by the door, her jacket draped over the back of the Italian leather sofa I'd surprised her with last Christmas. "How was your evening?" she called from the bedroom. "Productive? Yours?" "Exhausting. These developers never want to hear about environmental regulations until they're already in trouble." I found her in bed, reading a legal brief and looking like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She'd changed into silk pajamas, her makeup perfect despite her supposedly exhausting day. The second phone was nowhere to be seen. "Derek seems like an interesting guy to work for," I said, settling into my side of the bed. "He's demanding, but fair. Why?" "Just curious about the man who's taking up so much of my wife's time." She looked at me over her reading glasses, and for a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. Calculation, maybe, or guilt. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "You're not the jealous type, Eli. Don't start now." I wanted to laugh at that. The jealous type. As if jealousy was some character flaw instead of a natural response to being betrayed. But I just smiled and picked up my own book, a biography of Frank Lloyd Wright that suddenly seemed less interesting than it had that morning. The next few days fell into a pattern. Vanessa would leave for work, spend her day doing whatever legal consultants do, then disappear for hours with Derek. I would go to my office, push paper around my desk, and think about private investigators and second phones and the way my wife's eyes had gone cold. On Thursday, opportunity knocked. Vanessa had left her gym bag by the front door, ready for one of her morning workout sessions. The second phone was right where I'd seen it before, tucked into the side pocket like a guilty secret. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The screen was locked, of course, but Vanessa had never been particularly creative with passwords. Our anniversary date got me nowhere, but her birthday worked like a charm. Sometimes the obvious answer is the right one. The text messages told a story I wasn't prepared for. Not just an affair, though that was certainly part of it. Derek's messages were full of terms like acquisition strategy and hostile takeover and removing obstacles. My name appeared frequently, usually preceded by words like problem and liability. But it was the folder labeled Brandt Project, Acquisition, that made my hands shake. Vanessa had been photographing documents from my office, blueprints and client lists and financial projections. She'd been feeding information to Derek for months, helping him plan some kind of corporate raid on my own company. I sat in my kitchen, looking out at the water that had once seemed so peaceful, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and immediate, but underneath it was something else. Something colder and more calculating. Oh, I'd always been the nice guy, the one who played by the rules and trusted people to do the same. The kind of man who believed in fairness and second chances and working things out like adults. But nice guys finish last, and I was tired of losing. Vanessa wanted to play games? Fine, but she'd picked the wrong opponent. I copied everything from the phone onto a flash drive, then put the device back exactly where I'd found it. When Vanessa came home from her workout, glowing with exertion and virtue, I was reading the newspaper like nothing had changed. "Good session?" I asked. "Wonderful, nothing like a little cardio to clear the head." I smiled and nodded and went back to my paper. But inside, I was already planning. The nice guy was gone, and in his place was someone Vanessa had never met. Someone who understood that the best revenge isn't a dish served cold. It's a dish served with perfect timing and absolute precision. Vanessa's 37th birthday fell on a Saturday, which gave me a full week to plan something special. She'd been dropping hints about wanting a bigger celebration this year, something memorable that would show her friends how much I adored her. The irony wasn't lost on me. I booked the rooftop terrace at Skyline, the trendy restaurant downtown where the city's social climbers went to see and be seen. Sent invitations to all her friends, including Tara Whitman, her college roommate who'd never met a piece of gossip she couldn't weaponize. Even invited Derek, because what's a birthday party without the guest of honor's boyfriend? "This is too much," Vanessa said when I told her about the party, but her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "Nothing's too much for my wife." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I delivered them with the same smile I'd been perfecting for 12 years. Vanessa bought it completely because she'd never bothered to look beneath the surface. To her, I was reliable, predictable Eli, the man who paid the bills and stayed out of the way while she lived her real life. The week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Vanessa spent her days at the office and her evenings preparing for a big presentation, which apparently required a lot of private consultation with Derek. I spent my time doing research and making preparations for the show I was about to put on. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather and a sunset that painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The rooftop terrace looked like something from a magazine, all twinkling lights and elegant table settings. I'd spared no expense because this was going to be a night none of us would forget. The guests arrived fashionably late, air-kissing and complimenting each other's outfits with the practiced insincerity of people who'd rather be anywhere else. Tara showed up in a dress that cost more than most people's rent, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her smile sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Eli, darling, this is absolutely gorgeous," she gushed, giving me a hug that felt like being embraced by a python. "Vanessa is so lucky to have a husband who spoils her like this." "She deserves the best," I replied, meaning every word in ways Tara couldn't possibly understand. Derek arrived last, because men like him never enter a room without making sure everyone notices. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, his silver hair styled with the kind of casual perfection that takes an hour to achieve. The man looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. "Brandt," he said, offering me his hand with the confidence of someone who'd been sleeping with my wife for months. "Hell of a party. Vanessa's a lucky woman." "I'm the lucky one," I said, gripping his hand just a little too tightly and watching his smile falter slightly. "Thanks for coming. I know how busy you are." The evening progressed with painful predictability. Vanessa held court like a queen, accepting compliments and gifts with gracious smiles and practiced humility. She looked stunning in a black dress that hugged every curve, her dark hair swept up to show off the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. The same earrings she'd been wearing in the photos from her secret dinners with Derek. I played my part perfectly, the devoted husband making sure everyone's glass stayed full and the conversation flowed smoothly. But I was watching, cataloging every interaction, every meaningful glance between Vanessa and Derek, every whispered comment from Tara to her circle of gossip-hungry friends. At 9 o'clock, I called for everyone's attention. The crowd gathered around as I stood beside Vanessa's chair, champagne glass raised, the picture of matrimonial bliss. 12 years ago, I married the most beautiful, intelligent, ambitious woman I'd ever met, I began, my voice carrying across the terrace. Vanessa has been my partner, my inspiration, and my best friend through everything life has thrown at us. The crowd made appropriate noises of appreciation. Vanessa beamed up at me, her hand resting on my arm in a gesture of possessive affection. "So, tonight, on her birthday, I want to renew the promise I made to her all those years ago." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Vanessa, will you marry me again?" The gasps from the crowd were audible. Tara actually clutched her chest like she was having heart palpitations. Derek's face went through several interesting color changes before settling on a sickly pale green, but it was Vanessa's reaction that I was waiting for. The surprise in her eyes quickly gave way to something else. Panic, maybe, or calculation. She looked at the ring box like it was a live grenade. "Eli," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "This is so unexpected." The best surprises usually are. I opened the box to reveal the 3-carat diamond ring I'd bought that afternoon. Not because I wanted to renew our vows, but because I wanted everyone to see what came next. Vanessa stared at the ring for a long moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. Accept the proposal, and she'd look like the perfect wife, but it would complicate her plans with Derek. Refuse, and she'd have to explain why in front of 50 of our closest friends and acquaintances. Finally, she laughed. Not the delighted giggle of a surprised wife, but something harder and more brittle. "Oh, Eli, you're so sweet, but honestly, after 12 years, you feel more like a brother to me than a husband." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the clink of ice in glasses, the distant sound of traffic from the street below, the sharp intake of breath from Tara as she realized she'd just witnessed social suicide. "A brother," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air like smoke. "I mean, we're comfortable together, and that's wonderful. But passion? Romance?" Vanessa waved her hand dismissively, apparently oblivious to the horrified expressions around her. "That ship sailed years ago. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. There's a difference." Derek was studying his shoes like they contained the secrets of the universe. Several guests had started edging toward the exit. Tara looked like she was witnessing a car accident in slow motion. I closed the ring box with a soft snap and slipped it back into my pocket. Then I smiled, the same pleasant expression I'd worn all evening. "Well," I said, raising my champagne glass, "here's to honesty, and to getting what we deserve." I drained my glass in one swallow, kissed Vanessa on the cheek, and walked away from the wreckage of my marriage with my head held high. Behind me, I could hear the buzz of shocked conversation starting up, the kind of gossip that would spread through our social circle like wildfire. Phase 1. Complete. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into the Marriott downtown and spent the evening on my laptop, researching everything I could find about Derek Voss and his business dealings. By morning, I had a clearer picture of what I was up against. Derek wasn't just successful, he was ruthless. His development company had a history of acquiring smaller firms through aggressive tactics, then stripping them for parts. My architecture firm would be just another trophy on his wall, another stepping stone to greater wealth and power. But Derek had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I was weak, that I'd roll over and let him take everything I'd worked for without a fight. He'd counted on my reputation as a nice guy, a team player who wouldn't make waves. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Sunday morning brought a series of increasingly frantic calls from Vanessa. I let them go to voicemail, listening to her voice grow more shrill with each message. Eli, where are you? We need to talk about last night. This is ridiculous. Come home so we can discuss this like adults. People are calling me. Tara won't stop texting. You've made me look like a fool. The last message was different, her voice softer and more calculated. I know you're hurt, and I'm sorry. Maybe I could have handled things better, but we can work this out. We always do. I deleted all the messages without responding. Vanessa had played her hand, and now it was time for me to play mine. Monday morning, I walked into my office like nothing had changed. Gina took one look at me and raised an eyebrow. Rough weekend? You could say that. Remember that guy you mentioned, the private investigator? I'll make the call. By noon, I had an appointment with Marcus Chen, a former police detective who specialized in corporate espionage and marital infidelity. His office was in a strip mall between a tax preparation service and a dry cleaner, which seemed appropriate for the kind of work he did. Chen was a small, neat man with intelligent eyes and the kind of quiet competence that inspired confidence. He listened to my story without judgment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. How much evidence do you need? He asked when I finished. Enough to bury them both. That can be arranged, but it's going to cost you. Money's not a problem. It's not just about money, Mr. Brandt. Once you start down this road, there's no going back. You sure you want to become the kind of man who destroys people? I thought about Vanessa's laugh, about Derek's smug smile, about the months of lies and manipulation and betrayal. I'm already that man. I just haven't admitted it yet. Chen smiled, and for the first time since my birthday surprise, I felt like I was talking to someone who understood the game I was playing. Then let's get started. Marcus Chen worked fast. Within a week, I had a comprehensive dossier on Derek Voss that would have impressed the FBI. Financial records, business dealings, personal habits, and most importantly, a detailed timeline of his relationship with my wife. The photographs were particularly illuminating. Derek and Vanessa at lunch, holding hands across the table, Derek and Vanessa entering his penthouse condo, her overnight bag clearly visible, Derek and Vanessa in his office after hours, reviewing what looked suspiciously like my company's confidential documents. But the real treasure was the audio recording Chen had obtained through methods he declined to specify. Derek and Vanessa discussing their timeline for acquiring my firm. Eli won't see it coming, Vanessa's voice said through the tiny speaker in Chen's office. He trusts me completely, always has. And the other partners? Derek's voice was smooth, confident. Miles is old school, but he'll fall in line once we control the majority stake. The others are sheep. They'll follow whoever's in charge. What about resistance? Eli might not go quietly. Vanessa laughed, the same brittle sound I'd heard at her birthday party. Please. Eli's never fought for anything in his life. He'll probably thank us for putting him out of his misery. I listened to the recording 3 times, memorizing every word, every inflection. They'd planned this for months, maybe years. The affair was just a bonus, a little extra pleasure while they dismantled my professional life piece by piece. Enough for your purposes? Chen asked. More than enough, but I want to try something else first. Such as? I smiled, feeling something cold and calculating settle into place behind my ribs. A little psychological warfare. Derek's penthouse condo was a monument to his ego, all glass and steel and expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. He'd bought it 2 years ago, the crown jewel of his marina development project, and loved showing it off to anyone who'd listen. Getting inside wasn't difficult. I'd designed the security system for the entire building, back when Derek and I were still pretending to be friends. A few modifications to the access codes, and I had a key to his kingdom. I waited until Thursday evening, when I knew he'd be at the country club for his weekly poker game. Vanessa would be there too, playing the role of the dutiful colleague while they planned their next move against me. The condo was exactly what I'd expected. Sterile, pretentious, and cold. Abstract art on the walls, furniture that prioritized style over comfort, and a bar that probably cost more than most people's cars. Everything designed to impress rather than invite. I spent an hour making subtle alterations. Nothing destructive or obviously malicious, just small changes that would accumulate over time. I reversed the hot and cold controls in his shower, programmed his coffee maker to start brewing at 3 in the morning, adjusted his thermostat to randomly fluctuate between 60 and 80 degrees. But the real masterpiece was in his bedroom. Derek kept a framed photo of himself on the nightstand, one of those professional headshots that politicians use. I replaced it with a picture I'd found online. Derek at a charity event, standing next to his wife Monica, both of them smiling for the camera. Monica Voss was a formidable woman in her own right, old money and older grudges with the kind of social connections that could make or break careers in this town. She and Derek had been married for 15 years, and while their relationship was more business arrangement than love match, she wouldn't appreciate being publicly humiliated. The next phase required more finesse. I started small, feeding carefully selected information to the right people at the right times. A word here, a suggestion there, the kind of gossip that spreads through social circles like spilled wine through white fabric. Tara Whitman was my unwitting accomplice. She'd been calling everyone she knew since Vanessa's birthday party, spreading the story of my public humiliation with the gleeful enthusiasm of someone who'd witnessed a celebrity meltdown. All I had to do was give her a few additional details to share. I heard Vanessa's been working very closely with her boss, I mentioned during a chance encounter at the coffee shop near my office. Very late nights, very intensive collaboration. Tara's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Really? How closely? Well, I probably shouldn't say anything, but Derek drives a very distinctive car. Red Jaguar. I've seen it in some interesting places lately. I didn't have to spell it out. Tara's imagination would fill in the blanks, and her mouth would do the rest. By Friday afternoon, the rumors were everywhere. Derek and Vanessa's professional relationship had become the hottest gossip in town, whispered about in restaurants and discussed at dinner parties. The kind of scandal that made people feel sophisticated and worldly while they tore apart someone's reputation. Derek called me that evening, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "About what?" "You know what. This has to stop." "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Derek. Is there a problem?" The silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we weren't saying. Finally, Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're not as weak as I thought." "No," I agreed. "I'm not. This won't change anything. You can spread all the rumors you want, but business is business, and business doesn't care about your hurt feelings. We'll see." I hung up before he could respond, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in months. Derek was worried, which meant my strategy was working, but this was just the opening move in a much longer game. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Vanessa stood on my doorstep looking like she hadn't slept, her perfect composure cracked around the edges. "We need to talk," she said, echoing Derek's words from the night before. "Come in." She followed me into the living room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors I'd installed myself. Everything in this house bore my fingerprints, my vision, my sweat. It seemed fitting that this conversation would happen here. "The rumors have to stop," she said without sitting down. "People are talking. People always talk. That's what people do. This is different, and you know it. Tara's been spreading stories about Derek and me, saying we're having an affair." "Are you?" The question hung between us like a blade. Vanessa's face went through several expressions before settling on righteous indignation. "How can you even ask me that?" "Because I know you, Vanessa. I know when you're lying." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You don't know anything. You've been sleepwalking through our marriage for years, going through the motions while I've been building something real. With Derek. Derek appreciates what I bring to the table. He values my intelligence, my connections, my ambition. When's the last time you valued anything about me besides how I look at your office parties?" It was a good performance, full of wounded dignity and justified anger. But I'd seen the photos, heard the recordings. I knew exactly what she brought to Derek's table. "You're right," I said. "I haven't been paying enough attention, but I'm paying attention now." Something in my voice must have warned her, because her expression shifted from anger to wariness. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the nice guy is gone, Vanessa. The man who trusted you, who believed in you, who would have done anything to make you happy. He doesn't exist anymore." "You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared. because you have no idea what you've unleashed." She left without another word, her heels clicking a rapid staccato on the walkway. I watched her drive away, then picked up my phone and called Chen. "Time for phase 2, I said. "You sure about this? Once we cross this line, there's no going back." I thought about Vanessa's laugh, about Derek's smug confidence, about months of lies and betrayal and manipulation, about the life they'd planned to steal from me while I slept. I crossed that line the night of her birthday party. Everything since then has just been me catching up. Chen chuckled, and I could hear the approval in his voice. "Then let's give them something real to worry about." The war was just beginning, and I intended to win. Monica Voss agreed to meet me at the yacht club on Tuesday afternoon, neutral territory where we could speak privately without attracting attention. She arrived precisely on time, elegant in the way that only comes from generations of good breeding and better money. "Mr. Brandt," she said, offering me her hand with the kind of smile that revealed nothing. "How nice to finally meet properly." "The pleasure's mine, Mrs. Voss. Thank you for agreeing to see me." We settled into leather chairs overlooking the marina, where Derek's red Jaguar gleamed in the afternoon sun like a target. Monica ordered tea with the precision of someone accustomed to having her preferences remembered and accommodated. "I assume this isn't a social call," she said once the server had retreated to a respectful distance. "I'm afraid not. I have some information I thought you should see." I slid the manila envelope across the small table between us. Monica examined it with the same careful attention she might give a contract, her manicured fingers breaking the seal with surgical precision. The photographs spoke for themselves. Derek and Vanessa at lunch, their body language intimate and familiar. Derek and Vanessa entering his penthouse, her overnight bag clearly visible. Derek and Vanessa in what appeared to be a passionate embrace in the parking garage of her office building. Monica studied each image with the detached interest of an art critic examining a painting. Her expression never changed, but I saw her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly when she reached the final photo. "How long?" she asked. "At least 6 months, possibly longer." "And you're telling me this because?" "Because they're not just having an affair. They're planning to destroy my business, and I thought you should know what kind of man you're married to before he destroys yours too." I handed her a second envelope, this one containing financial records and business documents that Chen had obtained through his network of contacts. Derek's pattern was clear once you knew where to look. Identify a target, seduce or corrupt someone on the inside, then execute a hostile takeover that left the original owners with nothing. "He's done this before," I explained. 3 times in the past 5 years. The Hendricks Group, Coastal Properties, Maritime Development Associates, all small firms with valuable assets and trusting partners. Monica set the documents aside and picked up her teacup with steady hands. "What do you want from me, Mr. Brandt?" "Justice. Derek and my wife have been planning this for months, using information she stole from my office to plan their attack. They think I'm weak, that I'll roll over and let them take everything I've worked for." "And will you?" I smiled, feeling that cold calculation settle deeper into my chest. "Not even close." Monica studied me for a long moment, and I could see her reassessing everything she thought she knew about the situation. Finally, she nodded. "The Children's Hospital Gala is this Saturday. Derek and I are hosting. 500 of the city's most influential people will be there." "Sounds like quite an event?" "It will be, especially if someone were to provide additional entertainment for our guests." She stood, gathering her purse with the same elegant efficiency she'd shown throughout our meeting. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Mr. Brandt. I believe Saturday evening will be very educational for everyone involved." I spent the next 4 days making preparations. Chen provided additional surveillance equipment, tiny cameras and recording devices that could capture everything without being detected. I also reached out to Rebecca Martinez, a reporter for the local business journal who specialized in corporate corruption stories. "This could be big," Rebecca said after reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. "But I'll need corroboration, multiple sources. One disgruntled husband isn't enough to build a story on. You'll have everything you need by Saturday night. Just be ready to move fast." Saturday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies. The Children's Hospital Gala was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, 500 people in formal wear pretending to care about charity while they networked and schemed and judged each other's jewelry. I arrived alone, having declined to bring a date despite several offers from well-meaning friends. This wasn't a social occasion, it was a military operation, and I needed to stay focused. Vanessa was there, of course, stunning in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She stood near the bar with Tara and their circle of gossip-hungry friends, holding court like a queen at her coronation. Derek worked the room with practiced ease, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers as he moved from group to group, spreading charm like butter on warm bread. He and Monica played their parts perfectly, the successful power couple supporting a worthy cause. But I could see the tension beneath the performance. Derek's smile was too bright, his laugh too loud. Monica's responses were polite but cold, her body language screaming distance and disapproval to anyone who knew how to read the signs. At 9 o'clock, Monica took the stage to welcome the guests and introduce the evening's program. She looked magnificent in deep blue silk, every inch the society hostess. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this important cause, she began, her voice carrying easily across the ballroom. Before we begin tonight's presentations, I'd like to share something personal with all of you. The crowd settled into attentive silence. This wasn't part of the planned program, and everyone could sense that something interesting was about to happen. Marriage is built on trust, Monica continued, her voice steady and clear, on the belief that your partner shares your values, your goals, your commitment to building something together. When that trust is broken, it affects more than just the couple involved. Derek's face had gone pale, but he maintained his composure, probably hoping this was some kind of general philosophical statement rather than a personal attack. Some of you may have heard rumors recently about my husband's business practices, his tendency to acquire smaller companies through aggressive tactics. What you may not know is how he gathers the intelligence necessary for these acquisitions. Monica gestured, and the lights dimmed as a large screen descended behind her. The first photograph appeared, crystal clear and unmistakably damning. Derek and Vanessa in an intimate embrace. The reaction from the crowd was immediate and electric. Gasps, whispers, the sound of champagne glasses being set down too quickly. I saw Tara's mouth fall open in shock, saw Vanessa's face go white as paper. Corporate espionage is a serious crime, Monica continued, advancing to the next slide. Using personal relationships to steal confidential information, to destroy businesses and livelihoods, represents the worst kind of betrayal. More photographs, more documents, the entire sordid story laid out in devastating detail, Derek's pattern of seduction and destruction, Vanessa's role as his inside source, the months of planning and preparation for their assault on my company. The Children's Hospital deserves better than money earned through deception and corruption, Monica concluded, which is why my husband and I will be withdrawing our support from this organization, effective immediately. She walked off the stage without another word, leaving 500 people in stunned silence. Derek stood frozen near the bar, his face a mask of shock and rage. Vanessa had disappeared entirely, probably fled to the ladies' room to avoid the stares and whispers. I made my way through the crowd, accepting condolences and support from people who'd witnessed my public humiliation just 1 week ago. The tide of public opinion had turned completely, and Derek and Vanessa were now the villains of the story. Eli, a familiar voice called. I turned to see Miles Patterson, my senior partner, approaching with a grim expression. We need to talk. Monday morning, first thing. Of course. This changes everything, you know. The board will have to act. I nodded, playing the part of the wronged husband who just wanted justice. But inside, I was calculating the next moves, planning the final phases of my campaign. Derek found me near the coat check as the evening was winding down. His composure had cracked completely, revealing the desperate man underneath the polished exterior. You think you've won, he said, his voice low and dangerous. But this isn't over. I'll destroy you for this. You already tried to destroy me, I replied calmly. The difference is, I'm better at it than you are. We'll see about that. He stalked away, his shoulders rigid with fury. But I could see the defeat in his posture, the knowledge that his reputation and his marriage were both finished. Vanessa was waiting by my car when I reached the parking garage, her silver gown wrinkled and her makeup smeared with tears. How could you do this to me? She demanded. I'm your wife. You were my wife. Now you're just someone who used to live in my house. I loved you, Eli. Maybe not the way you wanted, but I did love you. You loved what I could give you. The house, the lifestyle, the social standing. You never loved me. She started to protest, but I held up a hand to stop her. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done. The rest is just cleanup. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing alone in the parking garage with the wreckage of her carefully constructed life scattered around her feet. Phase 3, complete. But the war wasn't over yet. The board meeting on Monday morning was a formality. Miles Patterson had called an emergency session, and the mood in the conference room was grimmer than a funeral. The weekend's events had spread through the business community like wildfire, and everyone knew what had to be done. In light of recent revelations, Miles began, his voice heavy with disappointment, We have no choice but to terminate Mrs. Brandt's consulting contract immediately. The breach of confidentiality is simply unforgivable. What about Derek Voss? Asked Jennifer Walsh, our youngest partner. Are we taking legal action? Our attorneys are reviewing the situation. Corporate espionage carries serious penalties, both civil and criminal. I sat quietly through the discussion, playing the role of the wounded party seeking justice. But my mind was elsewhere, focused on the intelligence Chen had gathered over the weekend. Derek and Vanessa weren't finished. Desperate people do desperate things, and they were both facing complete professional and social ruin. According to Chen's surveillance, they'd been meeting secretly, planning some kind of last-ditch effort to salvage their situation. There's something else, I said when the formal business was concluded. I have reason to believe they might try to sabotage our current projects. Vanessa has access to client information, construction schedules, security codes. Miles frowned. What kind of sabotage? The marina project is particularly vulnerable. We're at a critical phase, and any delays could cost us millions in penalties. I'll increase security immediately, Miles promised, and we'll change all access codes as a precaution. I nodded gratefully, but I was already 3 steps ahead. Chen's surveillance had revealed Derek and Vanessa's plan. They intended to break into the marina construction site and plant evidence of safety violations and code infractions. If they succeeded, the resulting investigation would destroy my reputation and probably bankrupt the firm. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed I was still playing defense. Tuesday evening brought the storm I'd been waiting for. The Weather Service had been tracking the system for days, a late-season squall that would bring heavy rain and high winds to the coast. Perfect cover for what I had planned. I arrived at the marina construction site at 8 o'clock, 2 hours before Derek and Vanessa were scheduled to make their move. The security guard, a retired police officer named Jim Morrison, was expecting me. "Evening, Mr. Brandt. Nasty weather coming in." "Perfect night to test our emergency procedures," I replied, handing him an envelope. "I need you to take this to the police station and wait there until you hear from me." Jim looked confused, but accepted the envelope without question. Inside were copies of all the evidence I'd gathered, along with a detailed timeline of Derek and Vanessa's criminal conspiracy. Insurance, in case things went badly. After Jim left, I made my final preparations. Chen had provided me with a complete surveillance package: night vision cameras, motion sensors, and recording equipment that would capture everything in high definition. I also had Rebecca Martinez on standby, ready to arrive with a camera crew at a moment's notice. The rain started at 9:30, heavy drops that quickly became a steady downpour. By 10 o'clock, the construction site was a maze of shadows and puddles, the skeletal framework of the new building barely visible through the storm. They arrived at 10:15, exactly when Chen had predicted. Derek's Jaguar pulled into the parking area with its lights off, and 2 figures emerged wearing dark clothing and carrying equipment bags. Even through the rain and darkness, I could see Vanessa's distinctive silhouette. I watched from my concealed position as they approached the main building, using bolt cutters to breach the temporary fencing. They moved with the awkward caution of amateurs, clearly uncomfortable with their criminal enterprise, but committed to seeing it through. Derek produced a flashlight and began examining the construction materials, looking for places to plant the fraudulent evidence they'd brought. Vanessa stood watch, her designer boots slipping on the muddy ground as she tried to maintain her footing. "This is insane," I heard her say through the wireless microphone Chen had installed earlier. "If we get caught—" "We won't get caught," Derek interrupted. "Eli's too trusting, too naive. He'll never see this coming." I smiled in the darkness. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I waited until they were deep inside the building before making my move. The motion sensors I'd installed triggered a series of floodlights, turning night into day and illuminating Derek and Vanessa like actors on a stage. "Good evening," I called out, stepping into the light with my hands visible and empty. "Lovely night for a stroll." Derek spun around, his face a mask of shock and rage. Vanessa dropped the evidence bag she'd been carrying, its contents spilling across the wet concrete. "You!" Derek snarled. "I should have known." "You should have known a lot of things, like the fact that this entire site is under surveillance. Smile for the cameras." Derek's eyes darted around the construction area, probably counting the obvious recording devices I'd made sure he could see. What he couldn't see were the backup systems, the redundant coverage that would capture every word and movement. "This is entrapment," Vanessa said, trying to sound confident despite the tremor in her voice. "Actually, it's just good planning. You two decided to commit felony breaking and entering, attempted fraud, and criminal conspiracy. I just made sure there would be plenty of evidence for the authorities." Derek reached into his jacket, and for a moment I thought he might be armed, but he only pulled out his cell phone, probably planning to call his lawyer or his security team. No signal, I said helpfully. Storms knocked out the cell towers. We're completely isolated until the weather clears. That was when Derek made his final mistake. Instead of accepting defeat gracefully, he charged at me with the desperate fury of a cornered animal. He was bigger than me, probably stronger, but I'd been planning for this moment while he'd been living in denial. I stepped aside at the last second, letting his momentum carry him past me into a stack of construction materials. He went down hard, his expensive suit torn and muddy, his dignity in tatters. Stay down, Derek. You've embarrassed yourself enough for one evening. But Derek wasn't finished. He struggled to his feet, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. You think you've won? You think this is over? I think you're a pathetic man who destroys other people's lives because you're too weak to build anything of your own. The words hit him like physical blows. Derek lunged at me again, but this time Vanessa stepped between us. Stop it, she screamed. Both of you, just stop it. She was crying now, her perfect makeup running in black streams down her face. The woman who'd always prided herself on control and composure was finally showing her true emotions. This is all my fault, she sobbed. I started this. I pushed for it. Derek wanted to back out, but I convinced him to keep going. I stared at her, seeing my wife clearly for perhaps the first time in our marriage. Not the polished socialite or the ambitious professional, but a desperate woman who'd gambled everything on a scheme that was always doomed to fail. Why? I asked. Why wasn't what we had enough? Because it wasn't real, she said. None of it was real. The house, the marriage, the perfect life. It was all just pretending, going through the motions while we slowly suffocated each other. Maybe she was right. Maybe our marriage had been fading for years, and the affair was just the final symptom of a deeper problem. But that didn't excuse what she'd done, the way she'd chosen to end things. You could have just asked for a divorce, I said, and give up everything? The house, the social connections, the financial security. I worked too hard to build this life to just walk away from it. So you decided to steal it instead. Before she could answer, headlights swept across the construction site. Rebecca Martinez had arrived with her camera crew, along with 2 police cars and an ambulance. The cavalry was here, right on schedule. The next hour passed in a blur of questions and statements and official procedures. Derek and Vanessa were arrested for breaking and entering, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence they'd brought was catalogued and photographed, clear proof of their criminal intent. I gave my statement to the police, playing the role of the concerned citizen who'd discovered suspicious activity and called for help. The surveillance footage would tell the real story, but that was a problem for lawyers and judges to sort out. As dawn broke over the marina, I stood alone on the construction site and watched Derek and Vanessa being driven away in separate police cars. They'd lost everything. Their freedom, their reputations, their futures. The life they'd tried to steal from me was gone forever. But I felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory. Just emptiness, like a house after the furniture's been removed. I'd won the war, but the cost had been everything I'd once believed about myself. Gina found me there an hour later, standing in the wreckage of my old life and wondering what came next. So, she said, offering me a cup of coffee from the thermos she'd brought. What now? I looked out at the water, where the morning sun was turning the waves into liquid gold. The storm had passed, leaving behind clear skies and clean air. A new day, full of possibilities I couldn't yet imagine. Now we rebuild, I said. Everything, from the ground up. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough.